guys, I'm Dr. Kori Propst here with Dr. Joe Klemczewski. Welcome to the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast. Hello, Joe.
Kori, how have you been?
I've been good, thank you. Coming off the end of a little family time in Montana, freezing my buns off, and doing a little bit of different cardiovascular work than I'm used to. And that's today's topic.
Probably shoveling snow or something up there.
I was not shoveling. I was trying to stay out away from the snow. But I didn't have my bike with me. So I was running every day instead of cycling. Yeah.
Well, I hope to get to Montana someday, but I would prefer the summer.
It's gorgeous. You absolutely should get there. Yes.
Awesome.
And I'll be there in September with my bike. When it's warm.
I was going to say, you've got the Montana connection, so we'll have to keep that option open.
Yeah.
Well, what I wanted to do, because we have talked about cardio in the past, is create a little mini series, maybe just a couple episodes, talking about how to get the most out of your cardiovascular training, how to get the most out of your physical training, weight training or functional training. Okay. And I really want to kind of pull things back into some basics, because I know in this information age, people can, at the click of a button, get all kinds of protocols and templates and that kind of thing. But I really want to back up and first look at understanding what our individual goals are. And what prompted this, Kori, I was finishing the final editing for our NAMS, National Academy of Metabolic Science, Tier 2, which is Physique, Sport, and Transformation Coaching. Yes. And I was going through all of this stuff because, of course, when you're working with extreme athletes, competitive athletes, general population clients who just want to look like they could compete, maybe for photo shoots, things like that, I mean, we are all pressed to get the most out of everything we can. We got to have the best diet possible. You got to have the best cardiovascular training, the most efficiency, the most bang for your buck, because you have to really balance all of those variables between I'm on a limited energy intake, right, yet I really want to get way beyond my metabolic set point. It's going to be hard to get those abs. It's not going to be just a cakewalk to get to that end result. So you know this, you've been at these levels, how much harder it is when you get that lean and you've been in a calorie deficit versus maybe just doing it in maintenance calorie levels.
Oh, it's a grind. I remember feeling like I was just trudging through quicksand. Like the perceived effort was very, very high. And I'm on lower and lower food levels and incorporating, twice a day cardio sessions. And it just, of course our metabolisms have a role to play in this, how quickly or easily we're going to be able to lose those last few pounds of body fat. But yeah, for me, it was not a fun process. And so maximizing my time was in my interest.
So back then, your primary goal for your cardiovascular work was to lose body fat. Of course, you're a healthy, athletic person, and so you're going to integrate things that still cover those goals. But compared to your goal exclusively being body fat loss as your primary versus today, where you're out there, you're running, you're biking, you're doing all these things, and your goal isn't necessarily fat loss. How do you compare those two in difference in just, you mentioned how difficult it was from a fatigue level, but day to day, your planning, your goals, like what are the differences?
So I'm not structuring my nutrition in a way to where I'm in a deficit every day right now. I'm at a level of body fat that is, it facilitates great training. And so body fat loss is not a goal, but performance is. Something that I do though, and this is to increase my performance and level of fat burning on those longer endurance rides, is that I will do fasted cardio workouts in the morning. So I may not have a lot of carbs at night in my final meal, and then I'll get up in the morning and do a fasted workout. But it's a low to medium intensity ride. I'm not doing intervals if I'm doing a fasted sort of cardio session. But that's for a specific reason. You're not going to find me going out and doing a race, for example, whether it's an hour or 5 hours, and not eating. So I'm not sure if I answered your question as thoroughly as you want, Joe, but I mean, it's quite a bit different because it's not about body fat loss at all. It is truly about how is my body going to use the energy that it has, whether that be fat or carbohydrate, during my ride based on intensity level, to get the best bang for my performance buck.
No, you answered it perfectly, because it doesn't surprise me that even though your goal is not to lose body fat, that's still in the back of your mind that if I'm going to put this time in on this bike, hey, I might as well, use fat as a higher substrate of energy, so that
not a lot of it, right?
I am accomplishing at least that as a strong secondary goal. So
yeah.
No, I think you were right on the money when you're describing how you're using the different fuel strategies based on your goals, and your goals can even change day to day.
Yes.
So you have this overarching goal of, this is for the long haul, it's for performance, it's for athleticism. But then, day to day and each week, there are times when you can say, just like somebody might train at elevation to make it harder for themselves, or they may run with a weight vest so that when they don't have the vest, that's been resistance that has increased their training. You being an endurance athlete right now, training fasted for some of your times increases your ability to withstand those changes in carbohydrate or insulin sensitivity. So you're really making it harder for yourself during those times, so that when you are in a fed state, in a performance state, your body is going to be that much stronger.
I want to add too, though, Joe, that there's a psychological mental training component to this as well. It's not just physiological. My rides that are lower intensity, because I really do practice kind of an 80-20. 80% of my training is in lower zones, and 20% of it is high intensity intervals. My lower zone training sessions, those are not fun for me. Those are sometimes just excruciatingly difficult mentally, but they train me to be more resilient and more mentally strong. If I'm a marathon runner, for example, that's a lot of time just doing the same repetitive thing, to where a lot of people, they just can't do it because they'll get bored or they just can't withstand that repetition. Cycling, the same thing. So I look at it from those two perspectives, the psychological side and the physiological side, to get the best bang for the buck. If I'm going to do it, what am I getting out of it?
Mm-hmm. And that's really a perfect segue into my final point, which is, we've heard a lot recently, in the last few years, it's all been about high intensity. Now research shifted a little bit, and now some people are coming back and saying, hey, I used to say all high intensity, but now I'm actually kind of chilling out and doing some low intensity. And for these reasons, and I see you smiling because anytime you take a dogmatic stance in science, you're going to eat your words at some point. You're just going to look like a total ass anytime you say, this is the way you do it.
Right.
Because there's always room for different tools, for different jobs at different times for different people.
Right.
So here's what I did not plan for today's podcast. This was really kind of funny. I do usually a 15-minute bike ride every morning with 15 grams of carbs that I consume, maybe an hour earlier, just a very slow 15 grams of carbs through a V8 energy drink. And then I do and I mean, just that little bit of carbs. This is a high intensity 15 minutes because I love that feeling that I get for the rest of the morning.
Yeah.
This morning, I did not do that. I did not have any carbs.
You did it?
I came in this morning. It's just 15 minutes on the bike. But oh my gosh, man, I get to that 7.5 minute mark, that 10-minute mark. I almost stopped at 13 minutes because I felt hypoglycemic to the point where, I mean, you know, I know my metrics. I know I get to a certain mileage point in those 15 minutes. I know how I, you know, crank up the intensity at different intervals. And so I'm always after that, you know, get that 1/10 of a mile farther, 1/10 of a mile farther, 1/10 of a mile farther. I was half a mile short of that and barely able to finish just because I was in that fasted state. So I know what you mean about that being just a total gut check.
Yeah.
But I got to say, my goals are not necessarily to be burning body fat in the morning. It's to get that great cardio for great blood flow and have an amazing first half of my day. So I'm going right back to my 15 grams of carbs because
I want you to do an experiment because there has been research showing that without food, like you're not swallowing food, swish and spit. Swish and spit your drink and see if that makes a difference. It has in studies.
Okay.
People are able to increase their level of output and their perception of effort goes down just from swishing and not consuming any additional calories or sugar.
Yeah, and there are two sides to this coin. You know, if my goal is to have the most aggressive, most fun and rewarding cardio, I can absolutely justify that those 60 calories that I consume prior probably mean I'm burning 120 more calories just by using that. And I get the benefit of actual higher cardiovascular output. My heart and lungs are getting better exercise. But if I made myself keep doing the fasting work and just sat back a little on the intensity, I would improve insulin sensitivity, probably A1C readings, you know, things like that would improve over time in my body. This is proven. I mean, I've shown on this podcast studies showing 40% improvements in fasted fat substrate use if you just grind through that kind of training. So again, this is not saying one is better than the other. It's in the context with your goal. You can choose which way you want to go.
Yeah, I did a 2.5 hour ride fasted the other day. This was a medium intensity ride. And I just it wasn't a slog. I felt fantastic. But so much of that is psychological, like I said. Like, what am I getting out of this? Like, oh yeah, here we go. You know, this is total brain training right now too, adaptability. And so I do think it benefits people to not just look at it from one singular perspective.
Yeah, I like your 80-20 rule. And you could even break that up into kind of like a third rule where, you know, hard, intense training can be pretty taxing on the body. I know just by doing 15-minute high-intensity bouts on an elliptical or sprinting or on a bike, I mean, my legs are pretty sore for a day or two. And it may not be that kind of deep soreness you get from squatting 500 pounds.
They're fatigued.
But it's still something that you have to then plan your training around.
Yeah.
So I think if you look at some of those fueled high-intensity bouts of cardio as performance-based, and you're still going to get some benefit in fat loss, no doubt, but it's not all fat loss. You can do other forms. You can do a 30-minute slower, low-intensity or moderate-intensity training at other times. I remember, I'll close with this.
Workouts.
Yeah, I'll close with this. I remember one time a couple times in my life, I've really gotten into running. And at one point I wanted to increase my 5K time. Another time I was working on getting a 6-minute mile, or, you know, I was hoping to go even lower, but 6 was all I could get. But, you know, I had a track coach write me a program, and I was running 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. But, you know, for my 5K times, there were short 1 mile sprint type days. There were 5K days. There were overrun days that would be lower intensity. So all cycled so that each day there was optimum performance and you were covering all of your bases so that every week, every single one of those variables could move forward.
Mm-hmm.
And so my goal in the middle of that training pocket being a 3-mile run, you know, that kept improving, as did my short times and my overrun times. And so
Right.
I think if we all look at cardio that way, we can get the best of all worlds, but you have to train for them individually and not have just one global perspective that you think this is the only way I do cardio.
Yeah, that's well said, Joe.
All right, Kori. Well, thanks for entertaining my discussion on cardio. I knew you're a great person to talk about this topic with because you are the cardio and intensity queen.
Well, it's fun. It's really fun. And I just remember when I was competing on the bodybuilding stage, and just, yes, cardio was for fat loss, but I just loved it at the same time. So I was doing a lot more than anyone would necessarily recommend if the goal is to just, you know, retain as much muscle as possible and lean mass. But I wasn't going to give it up because it provides me so much more than just physical fitness. So,
and I'm glad you brought up muscle mass and training for that, because that's what we're going to talk about also in this little short series, getting the most out of that. So thank you everybody for watching and listening, and we will be back next time with the Diet Doc Life Mastery Podcast.
Thanks, guys.